Welcome, everybody, to Cybercrime Junkies. I am your host, David Morrow, and in the studio today is a special guest, Ron Sharon. He's a well-known cybersecurity and IT leader, served as a founder of several organizations, various director roles and IT roles at such great companies as Canon, the LA Clippers, Universal Music, Mercedes, and more. He's a mentor to IT and cybersecurity professionals across the globe, very active, one of the top voices on LinkedIn as well, and a longtime friend of the show. Ron, welcome, sir.
It's great to be here, David. Thank you for having me.
No, I'm excited about having you. So for those that might not be familiar with you, walk us through kind of like what drove you to get into IT and cybersecurity in the beginning.
So I think it's a common story. I was always fascinated with computers. I was always fascinated with technology. So my first computer was 286 XT Turbo, one of those nameless white boxes with
they were
8
big.
megabytes,
They were big.
8 megabytes of memory back in the day, which was like, wow, that's a lot of memory. My dad came back once and said, I got a hard drive. It's 500 megabytes. And I'm like, 500 megabytes? What am I going to do with all that space? That was my initial reaction. It's so much, open Napster back in the day. Just start downloading tons of music and tons of videos and everything. And I'm like, that's exciting. This is a world I would like to get into. I had the MIRC, if you remember that client for the IRC network. You talk to people around the world, and it was the best thing ever for
that was like the first
teenager.
Chat, wasn't it?
It was like the first chatting application, I think. Maybe there were before, but it was the first one that I ever got
the
my
first
hands,
mainstream one. That one that kind of got.
And
popular.
I got ICQ later, and then AOL, and then MS Messenger, and all those ones. I had all of them because if you had a person that had MS Messenger, you had to contact them with MS Messenger.
Right.
So you had a bunch of applications. So I got into this world, and I'm like, this is exciting. This is something that interests me. So that's how I got into, taking apart computers, taking about radios, putting them back together, sometimes with no success, putting those memory chips. You remember when you upgraded from 8 megabytes to 16 megabytes? You didn't have those blocks that you put today. You had like these small chips that you have to put into the computer. So I was amazed as a young kid. I'm like, that's it. This is what I want to do. And I've never studied computers formally in college. When I attended college, I went to psychology. It took me, I think, 1 or 2 semesters of microeconomics to say, what the heck am I doing here? Why am I studying microeconomics? I have no clue. It was economics, and I don't understand any of it. So I left. And what I did was I self-taught myself. And back then it was harder because there was no YouTube. There was no Google.
Right.
You had to find forums.
If you think about all the areas where you can find self-education now, there's platforms and systems and everything. Plus there's
everything. Yeah. In your fingertips, you have to actually look for forums or buy an actual book that taught you how to do things, which I did. And then I self-taught myself everything to do with IT and networking and Exchange 2000 and Microsoft Server 2000 and how Exchange 5.5 back in the day. And that's how I got into IT. And then somebody just gave me a chance. They hired me and said, hey, Ron, we need you to manage this IT, the IT for this 70-person company. And I said, sure, I'll do it. I don't know. I'm self-taught, and I did it. And then I moved on from there. And I started in IT like everyone else, like IT manager, system engineer, Windows, Linux, Excel, all the usual stuff. 5.5 back in the day when you needed to upgrade it to 2000, you had to redo the entire thing because there was no direct path for upgrade. So I did all of that.
Right.
And in one of my jobs, I went into my boss and said, hey, there's this thing, cybersecurity, we need to take care of the security of this. All the systems we have, who's doing it? And he said, you do it. And I said, fine. And that's how I got into cybersecurity. So I really started, again, self-taught, going into cybersecurity.
What's amazing about that? I'm so glad you share that. What's amazing about that is I think a lot of small, mid-sized businesses today kind of are still there, right? They have an IT person or an IT group that they've been relying on. And when they say, hey, handle our security, right? It's a different world today. right?
Yes.
It's really a challenge for an organization to stay secure today compared to 20 years ago
Yep.
or so,
It's
right?
it's extremely challenging. And for small, even medium-sized businesses, the go-to people saying, "Hey, I need somebody to do cybersecurity," is to go to the IT team. Um,
Right.
Despite the fact that's not really in their wheelhouse, because the
No, and
cybersecurity side or the
yeah,
information security side is more
right.
of like, and I gave that example before, and I like using it, is you're building a house. There's an inspector coming to your house and say all of this security, things, that you don't want the roof falling on in your head needs to be fixed. You need to patch here. You need to have this pole moved 10 inches to the left, and all of that. That's cybersecurity. The people that actually move the pole, that's IT,
Right. That's a
right?
good
And
analogy.
there's and
That's
there's
a good
it's
analogy.
and there's a distinction between the two. And it's not sadly, small, medium-sized businesses can't afford to get a dedicated
Right.
person for managing their information security. And that's the main issue.
Right. Well, and even so, one person really can't do it all, right? They still have
And
to
one
pick the
person
right
can't do it all.
vendors, and they have to
Yeah.
do that. Um, what's your take on the industry in general? Like and here's why I'm asking. To me, it seems like the industry sometimes has done a disservice to some small to mid-sized businesses, and I don't mean that necessarily as a slam because they're capitalists and they're trying to gain market share, and what they have is good, but sometimes I think they might be right on that line of overpromising. Like if you buy this box, you will be secure. And it doesn't work like that. Like they're just waiting to get
So
that box over at DEF CON and blow the thing up.
yeah.
You
And
know?
that's the thing, right? And when I talk to small business owners, medium business owners, or any business owner, or even like when I have a conversation with IT people or cybersecurity people, my go-to sentence is it's not going to be 100%.
Right.
We are never going, whatever we put in place, it's not going to be 100% secure. And my stance is you will eventually there will be a breach. It could be a small one.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody just guesses a password and circumvent MFA on one negligible account, or could it be a big one? But there's going to be an event. There is going to be an event because nothing is 100% perfect. We can buy all the protection in the world. You can buy all the platforms in the
Absolutely.
world. You can have all the frameworks in the world. You can have SOC 2. You can have a SOC 2 certification. You can have an ISO certification. You can be CMMC 2.0 even. Nothing promises that you're not going to get breached. And the
Right.
way that determines what happens after you get breached is always your incident response. And this is a part where IT falls because IT doesn't work on incident response. That's an information security / cybersecurity role, which is neglected in a lot of organizations because they like to spend the money on the protection and not of what happens after.
Right. The incident response, the tabletop exercises, that building of operational resilience.
Yep,
That's what you're talking about, right?
exactly.
Because not all breaches are created equal. Like
Not all
some
breaches are
can
created
be,
equal.
yeah, some could be relatively minor and some could be brutal. And the length of your recovery and the cost of it really depends on how prepared you are.
Yep, 100%. And
Amazing. Yeah.
whomever ever built like a business plan for their business, right? They
Right.
have like a long list of things that needs to happen while you're planning to open a business. So the same thing in a business plan or in future planning inside a business, there always needs to be something that plans to information technology and information security. Again, two separate issues, but it needs to be planned. It needs to be written down. It needs to be exercised so people would know exactly what's going to happen. And of course, it has to be cost prohibitive to the organization because the number one thing always in a business life plan, unless you're opening a nonprofit, is the goal of the business is to make money
And to grow, right?
and to grow, make money
And
and grow,
the way
and
I
then
look at
everything else,
security,
provide the services, provide whatever
yeah,
things they do,
right.
and that's it. So if the business needs to make money.
Yep.
So if a solution costs $2 million and the business makes $20,000 a year, that's just not going to
Well,
work.
right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then you've got to worry about the business model of that solution
Exactly.
provider if they're offering something that's going to cost $2 million. But there are a lot of relatively reasonably priced security layers that can be placed even at the small business level.
Yeah.
And sometimes, people don't find out about them necessarily. right?
Yeah.
Or
So,
they,
and
or
that's
they,
why, yeah, exactly. And that's why, like, if small and mid-sized businesses, like I said, don't have sometimes funding, and that's okay. Not a lot of companies have this extra, $150,000, $200,000 a year to get
right,
a CISO or to get like a top level cybersecurity professional to do all of that. And that's why, there are these fractional CISOs, VCISOs, and all these kind of
exactly.
companies that can do it. But always, and this is my advice to everybody that's looking for some sort of a VCISO or a service like that, always research the company, always research the individual you're looking
Yeah,
at, always dig into their past activities, their past roles, and see if they're actually know what they're doing. Because
right,
there's a lot of things out there. There's a lot of people out there that I've seen that were, for instance, database administrators, and
right.
a year later they
Great
became
point.
CISOs.
Great
So
point.
that
Right.
makes you wonder. It's like, how did you get from a database administrator to be a CISO? I don't see the progression of it. I don't know
Not in a
what your,
year anyway, right?
yeah, not in a year
Exactly.
anyway, right? It takes a
Yeah,
while. So always
right.
look into the company you're getting, and or if it's an individual you're getting, always look at their resume, always look at their track record, and make sure you're getting somebody that's really professional, that knows cybersecurity inside and out.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's excellent insight. Let's circle back to the gentleman that said, "Hey, you want to manage the IT for this small group?" There's so many people that want to break into cybersecurity now. I mean, data breaches are always in the news, things like that. What are some of the biggest challenges for people wanting to break into cyber today? Because you do a lot of mentoring for people wanting to break in, people wanting to either break into the entire field from marketing or from sales or from other non-technical backgrounds, or let's say they were help desk or they were database administrator and they want to lean into the cybersecurity realm. Like, what are some of the biggest challenges that you're helping people with?
So there's a lot of challenges, and most of them come from the understanding of the role. Because, like we said,
Hmm.
medium size, small size, and even huge enterprise size businesses, sometimes recruiters do not understand what we do. I've seen strange things out there, and it's an example I like to always put out. It's I've seen a CISO requirement that has a accounting degree. It says we want a CISO, and the role requirement says accounting degree preferred.
Wow.
Now, I don't know how many CISOs have accounting degrees out there. Maybe 5, 10.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
know,
a tough
but
ask, isn't it?
that's a tough ask. And a lot of these kind of companies ask you, for instance, I'm looking for a penetration tester, has to have 5 years experience and a CISSP. And I'm like,
Well,
first of all, CISSP has nothing to do with pen
yeah,
testing.
I was going to say the CISSP cert isn't the penetration cert,
It's not the
right?
penetration
Like,
cert, so they don't
yeah.
they copy it. So the first thing
Oh,
you
they're
need
getting in
to
the acronyms because they don't understand,
they don't
right?
understand. They say, I need a penetration tester that has either a CISSP or a CISM, and none of these two certifications has anything to do with penetration testing,
No.
right? But they see it in other job posting, and they copy and paste it. And the
Hmm.
first hurdle that people that new candidates needs to overcome is that, right?
Right.
And recruiters would look at your resume and says, hey, he doesn't have a CISSP. He has this weird certifications that,
Right.
e.g., whatever, and
Yeah.
then they're going to just put you into reject pile, or it's going to be rejected automatically because it doesn't say that you have CISSP.
Well, and
So it's
there's so many platforms and boot camps and capture the flags and all of the like hack the box, and there's all these ways where a candidate, and correct me if I'm wrong because you live this more
yeah,
than I do, but to me as an observer, it seems like there's a lot of ways somebody could have their own portfolio, almost like an artist, to show
yes,
them here's
a
things that
hundred
I've
percent,
done, right? And be
yeah,
like, I did this, I was top 5% in Hack the Box or whatever.
a
That's
hundred percent,
demonstrating that they are penetration testers, essentially,
a
right?
hundred
To some
percent, yes.
degree, right?
The It's 100% true. The only issue
Yeah.
is that most recruiters are not cybersecurity recruiters.
Right.
They're general recruiters.
Yeah.
They
Right.
get an ask from a hiring manager, and the hiring manager gives them a list,
Right. They're
and
hiring an
they
attorney one day and then they're hiring this the other
exactly, they're
day.
hiring an
Right.
attorney one day, they're hiring a
Yeah.
salesperson the next, and they're hiring a database engineer
Oh, that's
the next day,
tough.
and then all of a sudden they got a SOC analyst or a penetration tester
Right.
requirement, and they just do the same steps. They don't understand the industry, and that's what I've noticed, which is the biggest hurdle.
Yeah.
All the things that we can do, that people can do, is we can try and change, and that's part of what I do. I'm trying to educate,
Yeah, you do a
companies and
really
recruiters
good
out there
job. Yeah,
how
you do
to
a really
look.
good job. One of the things I love is you say, and it's something I wanted to ask you about, is you say you point out like entry level cybersecurity job, and it requires 5 years experience. Like I've seen you point that out too, and
Yeah.
that's and that's a tough ask. The question I wanted to ask you is, what's your opinion on that? Because should cybersecurity be an entry level job? Do you know what I'm saying? Like
Um, yes.
it's more serious for an organization than just managing the IT necessarily, right?
That's
And so
yeah.
is it maybe it's not an entry level. I'm thinking out loud, so I apologize, but
Yeah.
maybe it's not an entry level IT technology job, but there are entry level steps within cybersecurity, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
There's entry-level steps within cybersecurity that you can take. And one of the things you can do is always start in IT,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of roles, and I'm talking about, for instance, cybersecurity. Let's distinguish a little bit cybersecurity and information security. Cybersecurity, in cybersecurity, there's a lot of terminology. There's a lot of, you need to know, for instance, just as an example, if you're a SOC analyst and you don't know what DNS is, or awareness lookup is, or
Right.
ipconfig, or ifconfig, if you're working on Linux, it's a problem. You have
Absolutely.
to know that basic information of what is that? What are the Windows, DOS, Linux commands? How does a packet is built? That's why I'm always saying, I always recommend to people they don't have to take the A plus Network plus certifications and pay for them, because again, it's money, but they need to read and understand that material.
Right.
Because if they don't, in the cybersecurity world, and we're not talking about, I'm not talking about forensics or policies and procedures, because that's different. But if you want to be a SOC analyst, and if you want to be a penetration tester, you need to know all of that. Because how are you going to penetrate
Right.
something? How are you going to penetrate a computer system when you don't know basic computers? How are you going to
Absolutely.
read a packet if you don't know what a packet even is? So you have
Yep.
to know that basic. So backing into the question of, is it an entry-level job? It can be, but it has to come with training with inside of the organization. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like 3 to 5 months training and shadowing and mentoring inside of your organization that picks you. And if they have that capability to do it, then it will be an entry level job. If the expectation, but sadly, let's go back one step. Sadly, most organizations today don't have time to train and mentor you. They don't.
Right.
And that's why you've seen a lot of job requirements today. And that's the key phrase: hit the ground running. Hit the ground
Mm-hmm.
running pretty much means we don't have any time to train you. I need you to know
Right.
everything on day one. That's what it means. And that's why cybersecurity can be an entry-level position if the organization, for instance, that you're applying for, sorry, it can get you the training, shadowing, mentoring that you need. If you're starting from scratch and you don't have that, and you need to hit the ground running, then that's pretty much impossible.
Right. Well, and that's where people like you and organizations like, I mean, there's so many of them out there now that you can get some of this mentoring or some of this hands-on experience to learn it, even whether you do that before the job or while you're
Yeah.
learning on the job. I mean,
Hack the
it seems
box,
to
try
me
hacking. It's
cybersecurity
few
is
of the prevalent
always,
platforms that
yeah,
offers you those kind of hands-on experiences
yeah.
without actually breaking anything, which is absolutely
Right.
always
Yeah, they're all
important.
like in a sandbox
Yeah,
environment or a Linux environment or something,
yeah.
right?
And there's like I mentioned before, like when I used to study this stuff, there wasn't any platform. There were no platforms to learn
No.
for. There was no YouTube. There was
Right.
nothing. If you wanted something, again, forums, BBSs, good old times, or just buy a book. You had to buy a book, an actual physical book that came with a CD, and the CD had the CD had a small lab environment on it that you can
Which
run.
is
That's
brutal.
the best
And
you
that's
can
just
do.
a brutal way of learning. When you think about it today, right? Like now they have interactive things. The software's built. It's
Yep.
teaching you. It's, you can click here and then do a demo. Like all
Yep.
these, it's so well done today. But I remember everything when I was learning. You'd have to do the book and, you'd read like 20 pages and then it was like, click here, click there. Like you're like,
Exactly.
I read 20. Like it took me all this time just to know that. It'd be so nice if somebody was standing right there. I could see a video, right? But they didn't
100%.
have it then. So it's amazing. Yeah, that's so good. And what about, obviously it also depends on where they want to be within cybersecurity because cybersecurity is such a broad platform or broad industry. You mentioned the policy elm. So like, let's say somebody's not very technical, but they're more a political science background, philosophy background. And let's say they're not really into the code aspect of it, right? Or the technical aspect, but there's still GRC, right? There's that whole realm of understanding risk and policy. And it's almost like giving legal advice in a sense, right? It's giving risk management advice.
It's GRC people and lawyers work very close together because there's some things that, lawyers need to interpret and GRC people need to, get some clarifications on. So when I used to hold a GRC role, me and the general counsel of that company that I work with, we literally on a daily basis emailing. It's like, hey, this came out on this state because GRC is federal, local, and state and local, and it's everybody has their own variation of things. So California has something else, then Virginia that's something else, then the federal, and even the federal is not equal. For instance, if you're a financial firm, you need to go. There's SEC has rules that govern you. If you're a public company, it's the FTC. If it's if you're a medical office, it's HIPAA and HITRUST.
So and now with manufacturing, a lot of businesses that manufacture parts that eventually wind up in a rocket or a tank.
Yeah. So
now CMMC's coming and they've got to...
Exactly.
That's
CMMC
a whole
2.0 now you have to be. That's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Each one of those, it's different. It's the same. Some of the aspects are the same and some of the aspects are different. So you need to imagine if you're a company that does medical things for the space shuttle. So you have the SCMMC and you have the FTC if you're a public company, and all of those have regulations that you need to adhere, and it's different regulations that you have to adhere to. Some of them again are the same, and some of them are not. And the government can come in and say, "Hey, we're gonna inspect you next week. Be ready." And you have to walk a bunch of people from the FTC around and show them your cybersecurity controls. And the FTC did. You told them, I have MFA enabled, and they want to see it. So you have to show them. This is how it works. This is what we do. When's the last time you had a tabletop exercise? You have to show them a tabletop exercise.
Well, and regardless of the industry, let's say you're not even regulated. If you want to buy cyber insurance today, right, it really is in your best interest to have some of the cybersecurity controls in place.
It's in your best interest. You can't have cyber insurance unless you have some of those cybersecurity
controls. It's true because not only will it reduce your risk of ever having a claim and ever having to go through the reputational damage and the financial damage and the loss of production, et cetera, from a breach, if it's a bad one, but it'll allow you to get the insurance, right? But B, lower your premiums.
100%, yeah.
It's industry. Cybersecurity is such an interesting industry because it touches almost every aspect of society, right? Like it touches
100%.
Legal, regulatory, insurance, like every aspect is touched by cybersecurity. The more I learn about it, and I'm constantly learning in it, but the more I learn about it, the more wide it is. It's relevant everywhere. And then you call it quits for the day and you turn on the news and they're talking about a big breach and you're like, God, I can't get away from it. Right? It's absolutely everywhere.
Yep. And you find sometimes those big breaches are because of the most simple things, right?
Oh
A
my.
VPN username that has been forgotten and nobody used for
Yeah.
like a year. An
And
air conditioning
everybody's
technician
so
plugs in.
tired of hearing about a phishing email. They're like, I don't want to hear about it. I know, and yet they
Well,
don't.
yeah, that's
And
the
and
so the phishing happens every day. Every day
every
somebody gets
day,
phished, like
yeah,
100,000, 200,000, 500,000. It never gets to the news because it never gets to the news. It's not like major company, major breaches, but it
right.
happens every day. Every day, a company or an individual fall for
And they've really
some
gotten
sort of a
good.
scam. A scam.
They've really gotten good. I've seen some of them lately in the last month or two,
Oh
where
yeah. So with AI
where I am
today,
like that is a good one. Like it is relevant. It is
yep,
a vendor that they're used to. Like it is so good. There's no the old red flags of like poor grammar or things like
yep.
that.
No,
Those are all gone.
these are all gone. Open like
Yeah.
ChatGPT today, you can write a
Oh
letter.
yeah.
It looks official from Chase Bank saying
Yep.
something, and it looks really normal. And they buy domain names, and one of the major issues is companies, technology companies are not very fast in mitigating these issues. For instance, one of my previous companies, I reported a domain name that was close, but they had a different letter. And
Right.
they
They
used this as
transposed like an
yeah,
I
they
and an L or
transposed
something
looking,
like
it
that.
looks the
Right.
same. And I had to look for the abuse email for the domain registrar. And I sent them an email and I've never heard back. And it took them like a while to take it off the air. And the same thing, by the way, with phone, like the smishing today,
Hmm.
right? Like I'm getting probably 20, 30 in a week
Oh
at
yeah,
this
I get
point,
them all. I get them every single day.
like
So does my
from
wife.
outside
So
of the
do my
country.
friends. Yeah,
USPS, you have a package. Hello, Ron, and they get your information. Like my information is out there, and my information is out there not because of my fault. I have T-Mobile, sadly, and my information
yes,
got hacked like 4 times already. So
I know. Me too. Yeah, it's
and
just
I'm like, okay, they
that's the
got
way
my
it
phone
is.
number, they got my email,
Right.
and they got my LinkedIn profile,
Hmm.
right? And people need to realize what they're putting on their social media and who can see it because it's open source intelligence, right? These people don't act in void anymore. These are not 12-year-olds somewhere sitting down. They downloaded some sort of a toolkit, right, to hack you. These are criminal enterprises that are sitting around researching you and collecting intelligence on you specifically or on your company specifically, and then targeting you.
Yep.
That's what they
Well,
do, and they
and
target you, and they know what companies you use, for instance, because you posted, I don't know where, I'm working with XYZ company,
or
and
it
they
can
have
be
that
found.
now.
I mean, or it's part of a data packet and a data set that's sold by data brokers, right?
Yeah,
Which
could be.
really doesn't seem very regulated as an industry at all.
It's not like, yeah, I know my data is being sold and resold every time I get an uptick in emails and text
Right.
messages.
Yep.
So I know that somebody bought the list because all of a sudden I'm getting X amount of emails and text messages.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, and they
and
can know a lot about it.
yeah, and it's phone calls and it's text messages, and the phone company, there's no law that requires the phone companies to do anything about it, so they don't do anything about it.
Right. So, what
And
are
people
you
get scammed on a
seeing?
daily basis, right?
Yeah, since we last spoke, obviously generative AI, has become democratized and very popular. Now, every product on the planet has AI in it. Like, everybody's just like, if it connects to
Yeah,
electricity, they're saying they
it
have
has
AI.
AI.
Which is just ridiculous. That's just salesmanship, salespersonship. But what have you seen in terms of how AI has been leveraged by cyber criminals? I mean, everybody was afraid, it seemed, right in the beginning that it's gonna be exponentially worse. And I've seen some things, but I really haven't seen as much as I think we've thought of, because it almost just seems like an arms race, because
Yeah.
clearly the defenders are using AI as well.
So I like to call AI the new zero trust. It's the new
Yeah,
marketing keyword, right?
it's the new
Like every
buzzword.
it's the new zero trust, right? Like
Hmm.
the 2020 till 2024, it was zero trust, and now it's AI.
Hmm.
That's
Yes.
the new marketing keyword. So everything is plus AI today. So it's an interesting thing, the capabilities of AI, and I've been dabbling a lot about with it in the last couple of months. People don't realize how dangerous it is. So there's a
Right.
program, like you said, I can pay $24 a month for this program. It could replicate anyone's voice. I can play something, and it would replicate someone's voice,
Yes.
and then I can set it up on a way where I can type, and it responds with that voice, and I can connect it to my phone, and I can call you and
Yep.
say, you know what? Hey, Dad, as an example. Hey, Dad,
Hmm.
I'm stuck in jail. I need bail money, and it's
Yes.
your son's or daughter's voice. It sounds
Right.
exactly the same.
Yeah, you're talking about like AI deepfakes,
Like
and I
deepfakes,
mean, to me,
AI,
that's just and they've gotten so good.
and they're getting
Like
so good.
they're
Even in
really
video
they
today, they're
understand
so
the
good.
intonation in your speech, the
Yep,
cadence of your speech, and then the video capabilities
the
have
videos
gotten very good.
capabilities and the
Yeah.
text, the text capabilities. So you can generate a lot of content text today. You can, like I said, you can write a comprehensive chase kind of a letter that looks really official, telling you that company X changed their accounting number, right? And
Amazing.
you can have a phone number on the top, and that 1-800 number goes into some sort of a voice generator, right? Because you don't know where these people are from. So it could sound like an American guy from Texas just telling you, "Oh yeah, we changed our account number. You need to send your checks now. Well, your wire transfers to this one, to this account number. Not a problem. You
And to
can,
defend against that, it's really not a cybersecurity cure. It's not a platform or a specialist. It's really about having policies in place, right?
So yeah, I talked about this with a friend of mine today. So it's policies, procedures, and it also governance. There is no
Right.
governance on this now. My friend, he made he equated it to like the first atomic bomb, right? Nobody knows how the bomb looks like before it went off. And
Right.
nobody had any kind of governance about atomic weapons before the first one went off. So
Right.
there's going to be, he says, there's probably going to be some sort of event that will require governance to be put in place when it comes to AI. What event it's going to be, we don't know. But right now, it's literally the wild, wild west. And not only that, industry today is moving towards automating almost everything, including code, right? So a lot of engineers are getting let go because there's new AI now to create programs. All you need is give it a prompt, do ABC, and the AI writes the code. What happens if somebody gets into that AI that writes the code and inserts a malicious
Poisons
code
it,
in there,
right?
and
Poisons the data.
nobody, pose in the code, and nobody knows? Is it technically possible? Of course it is.
Right.
Did someone already do it? We don't know
We don't know.
because we blindly trust the AI, right? And we've been warned, like with OpenAI, ChatGPT. It's like we've been told it hallucinates, it invents things. It
Right.
doesn't say I don't know something. It builds an entire story because it thinks it knows it.
Right.
So what happens if that happens in a code? What happens, God forbid, in a code for something important like airplanes,
Right. It's
right? What are
absolutely
we going to
true.
do? Like, is
Absolutely
it
true.
secure? Is it going through some sort of a code check? Oh, they're using AI to do the code check on the AI.
Amazing.
So
Amazing.
there's a
Yeah.
lot
I
of
mean,
things with AI that are good, a lot of things that are not so good, and a lot of things that we still need to figure out because it's an arm race, right? Right now it's an arm race. Everybody moving forward as fast as they can.
yeah. Well, I mean, we're so used to using search engines and doing a query and then getting a lot of blue hyperlinks and then having to go and look at all of them and then you formulate the answer yourself and then you write it, right? And AI just gives you the answer. It might have links that if
Yeah,
you
AI
ask
gives you
for it,
the
right?
answer. We don't know if it gives you the right
We
answer
don't
because
know if
right
it's
now, for
accurate or
instance,
not,
ChatGPT
right?
has the capabilities to go online and search
Hmm.
for things, and then it gives you an answer that looks real. But what happens if the website it searched are not correct? It's
Well,
getting its
right. That's
information from
exactly
somewhere.
right. Yeah.
Right. So, for instance, if you ask ChatGPT, who's Ron Sharon? they're going to put that I'm an author because I wrote one article and it found it.
That's
so
crazy.
Just because I wrote one article and it found it doesn't mean that I'm an author.
Right.
But that's what ChatGPT thinks because it went online and it found one article I wrote.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, people have always Googled themselves. Now the question is, have you ChatGPT'd yourself?
Have you ChatGPT'd yourself?
Right. Amazing. I mean, well, and in terms of social engineering too, I've seen it used in, I know you have as well, in social engineering, meaning someone will receive a phishing email and they may have paid attention and maybe they're not going to act on it. They're not going to change the wiring instructions. They're not going to release the sensitive information. But then it's followed up with a Teams video call or a Zoom call, right? And you get on that call and the person sounds just like somebody that you know, and they look just like somebody that you know, and you can ask them the questions and get all of your answers to anything that you would have concerns about. And then you would go ahead and release the sensitive information or change the wiring instructions or whatever the social engineering tactic is.
And it's exactly 100%. And it's just going to get more and more prevalent because, for instance, NVIDIA is coming out with their own mini server that's going to be an AI server. So a lot of people can just take it and do whatever they want with it, like program it for whatever they see fit by it.
That's going to be dangerous if that falls in the wrong hands, and you know it will.
Oh, of course it will. Yeah. If you have money, you're buying it.
Right.
Even if you're like, for instance, an embargo country, you have someone here buy it and then they ship it. It's not a problem. It's not exactly. It's not big an issue to get things.
Well, I'm always fascinated too because people don't understand. I was talking to somebody who is one of the non-technical leader, but it was for a healthcare organization, and I was doing some security awareness for them, and they were explaining, listen, son, we're just not that concerned about this cybercrime thing. We're an hour away from Wichita, Kansas. Like we're over here. We're physically safe, so we don't see the threat. And I didn't know how to respond other than to say, well, then just don't go online, because when you get online, you're entering their world. Like you're entering the world where they have no borders, right? And a lot of them live in parts of the world where, so long as they don't go after their own government, they're going to be fine taking from you and bankrupting you and harming you. Like there's no remorse. It's just business to them.
It's just business.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's, like I said, it's the thing that I think that's disconnect for people that are not in the industry is they think about hackers as some guy sitting in their parents' basement with a hoodie on, right?
Yeah,
that's how they depict it in
some
movies.
Kid cracking, drinking Red Bull, cracking code all day. Right?
Yeah, all day long with these green screens, right? With the Matrix thing going on their screen, and this is up to them, and then says, "Mom, give me my pizza pockets or whatever." That's not how it is.
Exactly the image that everybody has.
Right. That's exactly the image that the media is portraying, and even if if you ask the image generators to portray a hacker, that's exactly what you're getting.
Right.
Like a guy in a hood somewhere sitting alone in a room, but that's not the case for a long time, and it's not new. These are major criminal enterprises sitting in office buildings with structures of they have a CEO, they have a CFO, and they have workers, and they have all these.
They have customer service departments.
They have customer service departments.
Yeah.
They have. These are businesses from top to bottom. In countries, like you said, that local governments do not go after them. These are businesses that their entire goal is to steal your data or your money.
Right.
And they're not like a lonely kid sitting in a basement somewhere. It's a complete organization, multiple people. It's a business. It's business.
Yep. Unbelievable. So as we're wrapping up, let's identify what are some of the best practices? What are some of the things that you always kind of will tell a business? Maybe your top 3, not all of them, because everybody could just laundry list the 25 things somebody should do, but time and money are realistic restrictions for a lot of small, mid-sized businesses.
Yeah.
But if they can only do a few things, or at least they're going to do a few things now, and they're going to eventually evolve. I always think of it as like a maturity scale. right? When you think of one of those Gartner scales. And
Yep.
as they mature and as they invest and over time, right, they can start to do and start to head in the right direction. What are some of the top things that come to
Well,
mind?
the first one I always say, if they don't have any professional person that deals with the specifics of cybersecurity, is to get one. Doesn't have to be a full-time, like fractional CISO, vCISO, or whatever works for it, or just some professional that comes by once a week to give them his opinion on how they need to proceed.
It's really
And
important. That's really important. And you're one of the first people that have actually started with the virtual CISO. And I think that's really important because technology to me is a river that flows through every aspect of an organization. So as they're wanting, because they're focused on growth, they're focused on growing their organization, making more widgets, selling, billing more hours, whatever it is, right? And as they continue to do that, technology is going to be involved there. And they're going to be looking at new applications, new systems, new platforms, and having that person there to kind of say, hey, don't do it that way, do it this way, because it'll be safer. It's not going to even cost you anything, but configure it this way so that way you can continue to grow without interruption. That's really good advice.
Let me give you another analogy and why I said get some professional, like a professional person first. And probably some people will go right into, the platforms that you need to get a firewall, you need to get a policy, or you need to get a antivirus, which is all true. But here's the thing. If you give Michelangelo a hammer and a chisel, you get the statue of David, right?
Right.
If you give me a hammer and a chisel, all you get is some broken rocks.
There you go.
Because I have no art, like I can't even draw a straight line.
Right.
So everything that we give out, like all the platforms, the policies, procedures, are tools.
Right.
Tools need to be used by a professional. Right. So get the professional first, and the professional will build you some sort of a vault of tools or recommendation of tools, and you can talk to a professional and say, hey, we have this amount of money to spend.
And there's a lot of open source ways to start. There's a lot of ways to
exactly. There's a lot of ways to do it, and this is what we have now. If a CMMC organization doesn't have any money to pay for the tools, then we have a problem. Right. And that professional says you have to buy some real tools, because when the government auditors are going to come in, they don't want your open source anything to be in this environment, right? Because open source is a big no-no in some environments. So that's why you have to get the professional person first. Then they can get you the right tools, and they can chisel Michelangelo at the end of the day. You don't want your CFO or your CEO or the chief engineer, which is he's a very good chief engineer, but he's not a cybersecurity professional to do the cybersecurity things, because that's not what they do. Right. It might sound close, engineering, cybersecurity. Okay, let's give them this role, but they're not a professional in that. So get a professional. Number one thing to do: get a professional that gives you the right tools and the right advices of how to use everything to protect your organization.
That's excellent. That's excellent advice. Well, when you think about the tools and you think about security operations centers and the threat hunting, we hear those buzzwords. Business leaders will hear those buzzwords. And I always, going to your analogy of building the house, right? I always think of it, and tell me if I'm off, but like the IT group, right? They're good because they're going to build the kitchen, right? But if once they do that, right, and they're keeping it humming along, they're changing the lights, they're patching, they're doing things that are maintaining that building correctly. But if the dishwasher starts to leak and it's damaging the walls behind it, no one's going to see it, and it's going to be going on for months and months. The security people are looking for those anomalies. They're looking for things that might be broken behind the walls, behind the drywall, that's not visible to the regular people. And then they're going to stop it, because, getting back to our original point, not all breaches are created equal. And so if you can catch it early, that's kind of the role of that security operations team. Does that seem to make sense?
Catching it early before something happens, or catch it early right after something happens, and then prevent it from getting anywhere. So if some bad actor gained access, but then you cut off their access before they can touch any data,
that's fine.
that's fine.
It's a breach
right?
without consequence.
It's a
right?
breach. It's like, okay, a breach, because if that's the case, you don't have to report it. Right? But as soon as somebody
you don't have to go tell all of your customers
exactly, it reports to the government. You have, like, I think now in SEC, you have like 48 hours to report to the clients.
4 days or something like that.
The SEC, something like 4 days, I think.
Yeah,
I think you're right. I think it's 4 days.
Not long at all.
Which is not a very long time. But if nobody touched the data, that's the best thing. That's the best consequences. But if somebody did touch the data, somebody touched the data and you close it, and they only touched like one or two things, and then they got their access got revoked right away. Again, it's better than somebody being in your environment for 2 months.
Right.
And not like
and we see some
20 minutes.
reports. Oh yeah, and you see some reports. Like Health and Human Services has that wall of shame almost for healthcare organizations, and a lot of industries are going to that. And then you can look and you can say, first access was here, and then they learned of the access here, and you're like, that's 8 months later. That's 6 months later. Like, holy cow! Like, if they had like the ability to find them earlier, it wouldn't have been that bad.
Yep. And that's why one of many reasons that a SOC is important to certain organization. Not all organization will benefit from it, but to a lot of medium-sized and large-sized or enterprise-sized organization, that's an important thing. To have somebody that always 24/7 looking what's going on the environment. So if there's a 500 gigs of data transfer outside of the environment in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, it's like, hey, something is off. I've never seen this before. Maybe it's worth checking.
Yep. That's exactly right. Well, Ron, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It was a fantastic conversation.
It's always a pleasure.
Absolutely. So people can find you on LinkedIn, and they can locate you. You put out a lot of content, a lot of mentoring, a lot of great content. So
thank you.
Thank you for everything you do, my friend, and we will talk soon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Well, that wraps this up. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed our episode. The next one is coming right up. We appreciate you making this an award-winning podcast and downloading on Apple and Spotify and subscribing to our YouTube channel. This is Cybercrime Junkies, and we thank you for watching.